right now. The country's going to find out. Everything runs through Lubbock.
The Lady Raiders come into Waco and knock off Baylor. Davis to the plate. Save! Texas Tech has done it!
The Red Raiders come out with one of the most remarkable victories for any program this season.
We can play with any team in the country. We really are who we say we are, and I'm looking forward to everyone seeing that.
What is up, Red Raider Nation? Hey, what's going on? I'm back. Albert's not here. He decided to peace out, have some family time or whatever. I just kicked my kid to the curb, and here I am actually fulfilling my duties on tortillas and takes. And we have we got our good friend Joe, the Presidente, hanging out with us today. Joe, hello.
Hello. I mean, Albert's posting stuff on Instagram in the hot tub with the randos and stuff.
100% in a lightning storm. I'm like,
yeah,
like this isn't going to be good for the insurance claim. Like you can't have this stuff up there, but
no, absolutely not. Pretty cool video. Though.
Yeah, it really was, man. I wish I had a hot tub, but you can't have that kind of stuff in Lubbock unless you have a really nice cover. Otherwise, you're just swimming in mud. How about basketball? In the intro video, we have softball, which, man, I'd love to just talk about softball for a good 30 minutes because hard to be upset about anything that they've ever done. But here we are. We are ahead of Selection Sunday. This will drop. What day is it? It's Friday. This will drop tomorrow morning. So pretty much 2 days before Selection Sunday. And our expectations on both sides of the ball have been there's been a lot of surprise. I think at a certain point during the season, you were thinking, man, Texas Tech men's basketball could get that 2 seed maybe. Like we're right there. Like if we finish out strong, we're right there. You know, a really good argument for it. And on the Lady Raiders side of things, you're thinking, I mean, this was honestly one of the greatest turnaround seasons, especially for Coach Gerlich. But to have a moment where we're now looking at a 13-year drought, I think it's 13 years since we've been in the tournament, but a serious drought since the Lady Raiders have been in the NCAA tournament coming to an end. So wildly opposite expectations kind of coming into the season being met by the opposite team. So we're going to kind of dive into that a little bit, talk a little bit about each season, not in super depth because, I mean, if you're a fan of the game, you've been watching the game, so we don't have to dissect every single one, but kind of talk about that and see where Bracketology has both teams right now and who they're facing off against. And I'll be honest, Bracketology's got 2 pretty good teams, respectively for their conferences, but like, you know, teams that know how to win coming in our first round there. So, Joe, I would love to hear your thoughts first. Let's start with the Lady Raiders. You've been a little bit more critical of the Lady Raiders this season, whether in public or in private, but I'm outing you now. Tell me a little bit about just, I mean, and it wasn't without its due. I'm not going to say for a moment that you weren't right in your thinking of like, I got to see more, because for Coach Gerlich's tenure, it's been high expectation, some sprinkled in pretty great victories, but ultimately not delivering in the longevity of it. So much so that, you know, last season we were thinking, she will probably get the boot. But here we are, knocking on the door of the NCAA tournament. Tell me a little bit about how you felt like the season's gone and just your perspective on the Lady Raiders right now.
I mean, you could look at it from a couple different angles, but I mean, just face value for what they were able to accomplish as far as the season, you know, starting off, what was it, 19 or 20-0, if I'm not mistaken, like a huge, just handling their business. And then they had their fair share of some tough games that they were able to come out and get those W's in. And then, you know, they get into Big 12 conference play, and then it's just kind of like a roller coaster, is the consistency, you know, and we could probably touch on that as far as the men's side goes, but it's a little bit different, you know, because you're going to have on the men's side, the pre-JT injury and then the post-JT injury. So, but as far as the women are concerned, a lot of rough and rocky roads there. You know, you get that huge win against TCU at home, and, you know, you're kind of thinking that this team could probably, with the favorable schedule that they kind of had, it, after a certain point, it does become a favorable schedule. Now, you could have probably almost got, I'm not saying this for sure because I called this whenever me and Albert talked last time that, if, if, if the games went the right way, you could probably sneak into that 4 line for the Lady Raiders, given where, some of these games were, and then some of the opponents you were facing, you had favorable matchups after, I think after TCU, the matchups after that, you had some pretty winnable games in there that you're unable to get the W there. It's just inconsistency is just the name of the game. I mean, there's some depth pieces there, and there's some players that need to be plugged in, and you could kind of start seeing the vision of what Coach Gerlich wanted to do. She gets a better staff in house, from top to bottom, gets some better recruits in for this season that are getting coached up right, and getting and maximizing essentially the players' potential, and they've done very well in that, and I think that's just the start. I have the privilege of being pretty close with a lot of coaches there with the Lady Raiders, and most notably would be Coach Giroux. And me and him had a pretty decent conversation a couple weeks back about where the program's heading, and some of these transfer portal players that could potentially be picking Tech in the upcoming weeks and things like that. And it's just some of these players that you're not having like a Division III or an NAIA like top dog. You're talking about Division I athletes that are wanting to come to Texas Tech based on what they've put out on the court this season. So I think a lot of it is some personnel issues. The coaching is where it needs to be, but overall expectations, they exceeded any expectations I had, because not saying that I wanted to see this, but a lot of people were calling for a change after last season, and it didn't happen. And this was the breath of fresh air that everybody needed to like, okay, let's pump the brakes. Maybe Gerlich isn't the issue itself. Maybe there were some other underlying issues behind closed doors or behind the curtains that were going on that normal folk like me and you don't see. And they got some of those what do they call them, cancers out of the program. And it seems to have turned it around. So overall, I am very excited to where they had finished going into the tournament, and it's great to see them back in the tournament as a Tech fan.
Yeah, so to more to your point, I think this season was really interesting because this was long overdue, right? But this is a season where Coach Gerlich is saying, I've got to do everything in my power to win every game I can. Like every game, I'm coming up against the noose on it, right? And you have a season where you go 25-7, 12-6 in conference. You finish 4th. And you don't only just finish 4th, you beat the teams that finished 1st, 2nd, 3rd. You beat TCU, you beat West Virginia, and you swept Baylor. So it's like it could have been just as easily. There was a path to victory for you to have that number 1 spot in the Big 12 after having an abysmal season last season. The thing is that how do you manage success when you're living a survival mindset, right? That's the thing that gets a lot of people in trouble, because you have these big moments, right? You're sweeping Baylor, UCF, Arizona, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Houston. You're like, we are freaking rolling. And then you meet up with Kansas State, a team you should have beat twice on Sunday, right? You lose to Kansas State. And you have BYU, another team. It's like, you've got all the tools to beat BYU, and you lose to BYU. So now you're on a 2-game slide. Oh, shoot. Like, what? We got to get out of this. So then you beat Utah, right? Then you lose at Iowa State. Then you get number 1 TCU, and you're thinking, there's no way, buddy, we're going to get cooked here. Then you win 62-60. Followed up with Houston, Kansas. You lose to Oklahoma State. I will say, anybody who's upset about the Oklahoma State or Colorado losses, we're not paying attention to either of those programs. They're both kind of in a Texas Tech situation where they have said, we got to fix this now. And they've done a really good job of coaching. So those 2 losses were a coin toss. Getting swept by Kansas State is unacceptable. Losing to BYU in the way that you lost to BYU is unacceptable. You had the moment ahead of you, and you fell a little short. However, falling short still has somehow landed you infinitely farther than anywhere you've been thus far in your tenure as a Texas Tech head coach. So this is a good footstool, right? The question now is, can you take the next step upward? Right? I would be content. I think with Lady Raider basketball, where it is right now, content with another four. If you're finishing fourth or above, you're doing pretty good. Determine it on who you're bringing in the off season. Determine it on what new contract, if they get like extended contract, what those expectations are. For me, as somebody who's been watching Lady Raider basketball kind of have a really hard time for too long of a time, if we can get some consistent, like we're right there, if things go our way, we can kind of make a big splash. I'm okay with that for now.
Absolutely.
So ultimately, for me, a great season. But you're right. You left a lot. You left a lot out there, and it's just taking that next step. So a good way to kind of look at that, a good way to kind of think about what is the next step for Lady Raider basketball is that, excuse me, you're looking at Bracketology saying Texas Tech might be a 7 seed, the last 7 seed in, and they're going to play Rhode Island. Rhode Island, I don't know if you know much about Rhode Island, powerhouse of Rhode Island women's basketball, but they finished first in the Atlantic 10, which is a conference. But they went 28-4. Like, they had a really good season. They ended on a really hot win streak, and they're looking to do like any other team out of these lower, division conferences are looking to do in the tournament, and it's just to whip ass and like to beat a D1 school and prove like, hey, it's all the same. It's all the same basketball. There's nothing different for us. So how do you feel about a 7 seed? How do you feel about opening up against a team like Rhode Island again? And teams that are hungry, I think, is going to be the theme here for both the men and the women's teams. But how do you feel about opening up against a team that's hungry versus a team that would be like, okay, it's just Texas Tech, like no big deal?
Yeah. Well, this is also, it's all new territory. I mean, like some of the players that have come from other schools have experienced, NCAA tournaments, and I think that goes a long way. I think Danae Fritz and Jalen Bristow, the local product from Oregon State. I think the transfer that she came back down here, I think she's experienced NCAA tournament. Having some of these pieces that have actually experienced and been there, mixed along with the long tenured Lady Raiders that have been here as well. I think that goes a long way. And it's kind of like you have an invisible target on your back. To your point, you have essentially on paper, it's not really like this, but on paper, you have your David and your Goliath, and you have the David in being a team like a Rhode Island that's going in to try to prove a point. Like, hey, our brand of basketball could hang in the Big 12. And then now you're also in new waters there as a whole program and as a coach, first time in the tournament. But I think also good things for this Lady Raiders team is the run they had last year in the little tournament that they were in, the other tournament, not obviously it wasn't the big one, but they had a run there where, they had a stretch of games where they were playing really good basketball and figuring it out. I think, some of the like mopping that would help going into this deal. And it's, this is it, this is it for a lot of these women out there. I think it's going to be okay. I told you that I think, I believe that they could make it to the round of 32 because, whenever they have the right matchup, they're a problem for a lot of different teams. But if it's a bad matchup, as far as personnel goes, then, that's now it's kind of up in the air. But I don't think this team would face anything like adversity wise until after the round of 32. That's why I think they could make it, after one game, could do their business. And also just depending on where they're playing at, what's that bracket have them playing at in like Minnesota somewhere? I don't know what region that's in.
Yeah, I don't remember what I saw. Yeah.
Yeah. How far away from Texas are you? Yeah, I know that Tech fans travel pretty well and stuff like that, but man,
that stuff works on athletes for sure.
Yeah. I'm sure Coach, it's a pretty crappy way, right? Because you have a really terrible taste in your mouth, especially how you lost to Kansas State, letting them get on that, what is it, a 21-0 run to end the game, and you just essentially couldn't find the bottom of a basket. I think a lot of sour grapes were left in a bunch of players' mouths and stuff, and I don't think that's another game they would like to repeat like that. So, whenever they get big early, they should, keep that foot on the gas there. But I think it's a good matchup, and it's a good test to see where this team is at and where the coaching staff is at as far as being able to get the girls or the women up for a game like this after, the last game that was abysmal towards the back end. I just think that Coach Gerlich and their staff should have them ready, and I think the players will hold themselves accountable for that as well.
Yeah, that's right. I think you're on the money. Losing like that certainly is not the way that any of these women want to go out, especially after the season that they had. It's downright disrespectful for them, first and foremost, and then on the fan base. It's like, man, it's really hard. You want to go out, you want to give the fans your best effort, and it's really, it's hard to swallow that pill. So NCAA tournament, going to have your second chance here. Let's flip over to the men's basketball. Interesting season. And yet the pattern for me remains Texas Tech has a affinity. The men's basketball team has an affinity of, we've got this pattern where we have a lot of transfers that we're really excited about in the offseason, right? And they take their trip, team bonding trip, whatever it is. They all get to know each other in the pot, and they're having a good time. And then the actual basketball starts, and we stop when we play like the difficult teams. You really start to see, I wouldn't say the cracks, I would just say the gaps, because cracks for me is like it's all put together and it's falling apart. But for me, the gaps early of like, man, who was not on the same page as what the game plan is, or like who expected to be more of a ball handler than they should be in this role, or like who is expecting somebody else to do their job. Those kind of things get exposed really early, and for us, that's Illinois, right? Illinois was a big game for us. It's like, man, we could have won that. We just like it wasn't there at the end, right? Or Purdue, it's like, oh god, I wish we could just forget that game against Purdue because we shouldn't have had a basketball game.
That was a dust off. Yeah,
that was a dust. Yeah, I said no. The Arkansas game, it's another frustrating showing where you have what it takes, but it just we're missing something's going wrong, right? And then there's the turn, right? So I call it the turn. You have a big game before conference play. Duke, number 3, Duke in the Garden. 82-81, you come up with a big victory, man. Everybody's going, hey, Texas Tech. And ain't nobody remember the Arkansas game except Arkansas fans who like glaze themselves in the comments. Nobody remembers the Purdue game. Nobody remembers the Illinois game. All they remember is that Texas Tech went out and beat Duke after everybody thought there ain't no way in hell, right? And then you go on, you have your loss against Houston, close loss all the same. And you go on a pretty great run, ending with a huge win against Houston, right? And then you flounder a little bit, and you go on a little run, you flounder, you go on a little run, and you flounder. Joe, tell me about your perception of this season, kind of how you've seen it go, any kind of insight you have right now about where we were at the beginning to where we are now. And then we'll talk about, Big 12 tournament. We'll talk about all that crappy stuff before, where do we land?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think a lot is on your plate. You have every team that has transfers has those learning bits of time where, you're trying to find, as a coaching staff, you're trying to find the right lineup. You're trying to find the pieces. You're trying to find the right offense that works with the lineup that you're looking for having. So you have these early on games. Christian Anderson was primarily your number 2 last season. So now you've kind of injected him as your primary ball handler, your assist guy, which, as the season has progressed, he's really taken that job by storm, as a primary ball handler and, being able to see the court so well. But, I think you have some growing pains early on in the season with trying to acclimate Christian Anderson as your primary point guard while also trying to acclimate and, implement all of these different sets for the offense. This is probably one of the better three-point shooting teams that Tech has had in a while. And, with all due respect to last season and how well they shot the three, or at least going into the season on paper, you had Tyree Bryan, who was over 40%. You had Donovan Atwell over 40%. You had Jalen Perry coming out of high school. He shot over 45% from beyond the arc, in high school. I know that's high school, but, you have all of these pieces and it's just trying to figure it out. So I'd say all the games up into the Duke game is figuring it out. That's, the first section of this schedule. Then after Duke, then you get into the big game where Christian Anderson takes over Duke, hitting big shot after big shot after big shot, and ultimately getting to that victory against Duke. And then now you're starting to be a whole lot, the offense is in tune, they're in sync, even that loss against Houston, you had chances to take Houston down in Houston whenever you traveled over there. And this team just, has that grit and that fight, the toughest team wins, that shows out on the court. And that's what McCaslin has preached since he's been out here. And then you start, like you said, you don't see necessarily cracks, but you're not getting quite as much out of certain players that you thought you would. You're finally getting healthy on the back end. You finally get a Josiah Mosley back. You get a Luke Bamboye back. Now you're having to reinvent your offense again because now you have all your players at your disposal. And then, you're able to go into Tucson, Arizona and take down the Wildcats. Then less than 5 days later, you're losing arguably your best player and arguably the best player in the Big 12 to an ACL injury. And now you're having to flip the script again on how this offense and how you want this team to be ran, because now, as much as everything kind of revolved around JT and Christian Anderson, you take JT out and now you're trying to figure some things out. You're able to win some games there. You win in Ames, but it's like there's two sides of it. You have to rebound and you have to knock threes down. And if you're not doing either one of those things, you're not going to win much games with the roster that you have right now. Unfortunately, it's just how it is. So, and if you're not getting one or the other, it's just going to be very tough, especially once you start getting into those deeper games in March. So overall for the team, it's I wouldn't say it's inconsistency. I just would say that there's been a lot of things happening around the roster, between injuries and things of that nature, and then acclimating rosters and lineups and things like that you've been dealing with all season. And it's just tough to navigate through sometimes.
Buddy, I'm so embarrassed by that Arizona State game. to have the win against Arizona and then to just be like, you know what? Let's just hang out, stay here. Let's collect our business and go home.
Right.
And not only you lose against one of the most embarrassing teams in the Big 12, you lose your best player on the most bullcrap breakaway. I was like, this is unbelievable, man. I can't believe this is happening to me right now. To your point, I think a lot of identity developing throughout the season ended up being a really good thing for this team, because immediately in the wake of JT Toppin's absence after Arizona State, you come out, you have what I call the stair step, the three stair step to success for me. You had three unique teams right after you lost JT Toppin. Kansas State is garbage, just lost their head coach. You got to whip this team in my mind. Show them that you mean business. You drop 100. Oh, dude, okay. I believe. Then you got Cincinnati, a team that is hungry, that has been red hot, that has been beating good teams because they are well coached and they've got a team that can believe, that believes they can win. You win 80-68. And it felt really tight until it didn't, right? And then Texas Tech was like, I'm just going to rain threes upon you and block out the sun. And then you get Iowa State, a great basketball team that's had up and down. I don't care what people say about Iowa State. They're still a good basketball team. And you take them to the woodshed again towards the end of the game. You just control it. You're like, I'll see you later. And I mean, for me, you hit Dwight's muscle. I mean, you three big victories right after losing JT Toppin. And it felt like we renegotiated our identity because we've had this moment where everybody kind of knows their role and we're stepping up in the absence. You have Bamboye was even kind of stepping up. I think that this is an interesting one, but I think that you could say maybe Lawan Watts stepped up a little bit until he didn't. So
Right.
great three games. The problem, Joe, was that all of a sudden everybody realized, damn, they just be shooting threes. They can't do anything else. They can't get in the paint. They're just shooting threes. So let's play for that. And TCU, a team you should have beat, you lost. BYU, a team you should have beat, good team, but you should have beat them. I think BYU very much in the same boat after they lost a star player to a knee injury. Same boat, could have beat them. You played them in Provo, but still could have beat them. And then the opener of the Big 12 tournament. Let me tell you something. If I never hear the name Momcilovic again, I'll be okay. I cannot stand a tall white dude who can't miss. I'm a Larry Bird hater. I bet everybody watching Bird in his prime couldn't stand the guy. It was like, look at this lanky, Gumby-looking dude. No way he drops. Oh, my God, he dropped 30 points. Can you believe it? This tall white guy.
Just like Peja Stojakovic and his son.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
What is up with all the Vitches around here? Why are we recruiting from the most impoverished part of Europe? Let these people stay home and work in their factories and do their job. Stop bringing them here to embarrass my favorite teams on the hardwood. That's all I'm saying, man. I can't keep the Vitches at home. VIC is what I said. VIC.
Bitches be crazy.
Bitches be crazy. Every time I see a bitch on a depth chart, I think that kid's gonna go off and it's gonna ruin my night. It's gonna ruin my mood. But you have one of the most abysmal showings in the Big 12 tournament I think you've ever had in the history of your program. And I'm not going to look up the references for that. I'm just speaking completely from the heart. That being said, Texas Tech basketball, you go from having, I think some people would say, the most impressive list of top 10 victories in a season for this college basketball season. You know, you have a lot of really impressive top 10 victories. And that was making people, after you beat Arizona, people were saying, even after you lost Arizona State and you beat Iowa State, people were saying, this team could probably move to the 2 seed if they play their cards right. Right? If it all falls, they're definitely a 3. But this could be a 2 seed, a Texas Tech team. And now you've got people going, I don't know, dude, like 5, maybe. Somewhere Jeff Goodman's rubbing his hands together. He's like, dude, give him the 12 or whatever. Yeah. Give him the 10.
The 10.
And it's hard to argue when you just see what we did against Iowa State or what we didn't do. Right. But right now, Bracketology's got us number 5 against number 12. High Point, that's out of the Big South. Again, another real basketball program. They got number 1 in the Big South. Similar situation as Rhode Island. Big High Point's like, dude, Texas Tech, big brand. They got a lot of money over there. If we beat them, that's going to look real good. Joe, what are your first? If this is how it falls, what's your impression about Texas Tech being the 5 seed? And that's in Portland. That estimation's in Portland, so we'll be on the west coast, which I hate the West Coast for tournament time unless it's like later in the day. But
right.
What's your impression on that? And what's your impression on maybe getting a low conference stunner, a Cinderella like High Point, another 12 seed? Let's just say a 12 seed.
Yeah, I feel more confident, I guess, more just because I've seen the body of work and the staff, and you know how McCaslin and his coaching staff, you know, prepare for games. I feel a whole lot, like I said, I feel more. This team is crazy because if you knock down threes and you rebound, you even without Toppin, you could play with anybody in the country. I think so. I mean, without a doubt. But if you're not doing one or the other, like I said earlier, then you know you're kind of just you're a Bentley without an engine. You're just cool to look at.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah,
you know, it's
one of those repoed Lamborghinis.
Yeah, it's like, man, that's so cool. Oh, yeah, it doesn't have doors, whatever, you know. It's interesting because I think that this team, like I said, if the cards fall right, then they could obviously make a run into at least the Sweet 16. I think this team can do that, and that's without JT Toppin. playing a mid-major. I mean, they were going to do that as a 3 or 4 or 5 seed. I mean, it doesn't really necessarily matter. They're going to play somebody, and then in the second round, in the round of 32, they'll play, a 4 or 5. That's just how it was going to land anyway. So I like the draw. I mean, I personally think they're still going to be on that 4 line personally, because, it's just, I don't think the Big 12 tournament should have anything to do with where their seeding's at right now. And God help me that glass cord didn't take down one of our other stars to hinder him into the tournament limping for whatever reason. As long as they're healthy and they could play as close to 100% as possible. After that, what happened in Kansas City, it's also like the women, right? You don't want to have that sour taste in your mouth after what just took place in Kansas City. I think that a lot of mending has gone on, and I think Coach McCaslin and his crew will have the team ready to go. So if it's High Point for whatever reason, not saying that High Point's not a good team. I just don't think this basketball team will stagger or stumble against a team like that.
Yeah, let's hope so. But great transition. The basketball court at the Big 12 tournament. Absolute buns. What are your thoughts? And
100%.
At first I was like, I see what they're trying to do. This is like private equity 101 of like, how can we make this more appealing to everybody without actually any care for the game? And I thought, okay, they're going to do their due diligence. They're going to like level out the court. They'll probably have some kind of epoxy on it where it feels like a hardwood, blah, blah, blah. And then I saw a picture of it and I was like, oh no, this is like just TVs put together with caulk. Like,
yeah,
that's it. No wonder, dude. No wonder everybody's slipping. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. I think it's cool to look at, right? It's like a Lego set of something like some 3,000 piece Lego set. You finally put it together, but you're not going to play with it. You're not going to take this model car and just roll it around in the dirt outside. You're just going to look at it. Yeah. And I think it was really cool to look at, like, how they did introductions, how they did, certain aspects of, all the different teams. I remember when Tech was playing, I think I had seen that they had announced the all Big 12 team on the screen on the floor, and they were showing it, during a timeout. And I think that's really cool. Like, concept wise, it's really, really cool. But, there's a lot of concept cars out there that never hit the streets, and there's a reason for it, just because they were buns. This costs a lot of people a lot of money. I mean, and it kind of, I applaud Yormark for, wanting to be the lead innovator for the Big 12, but this one he didn't see it through, man. Like, this was so bad that they even changed the court, for the championship and the semifinal games. It's just, it was awesome on paper, but it shouldn't have been put in place. 100%.
Yeah, and too many people ended up either with minor injuries or a little bit more, for something like this. I'm like, you cannot, hopefully never do this again, right? But it's like that. It seems like a really big, to mess with the flooring at all in my mind is a massive risk if you're a commissioner for the health of the players that are going to represent your conference. Like, so say Christian Anderson got more hurt. It's like, wow, you took a Texas Tech, which is like living on Christian Anderson right now. It's like, if we don't have him, it's over, right? You don't have anybody to kind of facilitate. You've basically put Texas Tech in a position where they might lose against a High Point, right? Yeah. And that would look terrible for the Big 12. So just an embarrassing choice. Super cool, but ultimately, guys, let's just stick to the crazy graphics and stuff. Can be a TV viewer enjoyment. Just put you got the technology. Just make it look like the court is doing its crazy stuff, right? People at the game can just be at the game and enjoy the game, right? And let TV be TV.
Yeah, it's like I said, it was just it was too much, right? I mean, just too much. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here, right? There's enough technology out there to where you could do stuff on the court. I know that there's a lot of things that universities do as far as like laser shows that go and project onto the actual court that's there. You saying we don't have enough coin in the Big 12 to do that? Come on now. Let's be
That's
realistic here. There's just a better way of doing it. I think this was something that wasn't seen fully through. Like there wasn't enough data on actually playing on said surface, at any level, more or less a collegiate level. Imagine them just, Adam Silver just rolling these out in the NBA tomorrow. Like, oh, sorry, just got to deal with it. Like, it'd just be terrible.
Yeah.
And if some NBA superstar like a Giannis or a LeBron James or Luka, somebody just craps all over these these courts and stuff, maybe they'll stop talking about it. It's almost like the airless basketball, right? It's cool, but really, come on, whatever.
Yeah. If it ain't broke,
don't fix it.
So 2 teams limping into the NCAA tournament, coming up against 2 very hungry teams who want to make a difference. But we're projecting we're getting past the first round at least. Maybe we'll sink our way further second weekend. But we won't know final until March 15th. That's Sunday. Selection Sunday is upon us.
Right.
Men, I think it's at 5 p.m. Men start at 5 p.m. Women shortly thereafter. And we'll get a good look at where both of these teams are going to end up, both on the bracket, the side, as well as the region, see who we're matched up against. And we'll circle back around before those games get going and talk about that preview more in depth. Joe, do you have anything else you'd like to say to the people in Albert's absence?
Albert sucks. That's about all I got.
That's right. Best review that was ever left for this podcast is that it's just better without Albert. And you know what? I'm going to show them the numbers on this one, and it's probably going to be triple what we usually do. So, hey, if you like this, whatever, subscribe, do your thing. But Texas Tech basketball, we'll get a preview out next week for whatever games we got going on. And softball, we'll talk about softball very soon. Promise you that much. As well as, pay attention.
I don't know if that game's going great right now. It was 5-0 a while ago last time I checked Arizona. So,
oh, really? Arizona, great softball team. So, not one I'm afraid. We should have. Anyways, yes.
Till the next time.
Till the next. Yeah. So forget that one. We're doing super great. I'm just joking. For Joe, for the Presidente, for me, it's the People's Champ. Albert somewhere, and who knows where. Maybe he got floated away. This has been the Tortillas and Takes podcast presented by the 1012 Network, your place for all Big 12 news. Stay wrecked, people.